Rumpelstiltskin. Once upon a time, in a small kingdom, there lived a poor miller who had a beautiful daughter. One day, the miller was summoned to the palace to meet the king. In an attempt to impress the king and gain favor, the miller boasted, "My daughter can spin straw into gold." The king, a greedy and ambitious man, was immediately intrigued by this claim. He ordered the miller to bring his daughter to the palace the very next day. When the miller's daughter arrived, the king led her to a large room filled with straw. He pointed to the heap of straw and told her, "If you truly can spin this straw into gold by morning, I will reward you handsomely. But if you fail, you will be thrown into prison." The miller's daughter was terrified. She had no idea how to spin straw into gold, and she felt completely helpless. As she sat there, overwhelmed by fear, a small man appeared in the room. He had a mischievous smile and a strange, knowing look in his eyes. "I can help you," he said in a soft voice, "but you must promise me something in return." The miller's daughter, desperate and with no other choice, agreed to whatever the strange man asked. The little man then took a spinning wheel and began to spin the straw into glittering gold. In awe, the miller's daughter watched as the pile of straw turned into sparkling golden thread. By morning, the room was filled with gold, and the king, astonished by the magic, was overjoyed. However, the king's greed grew stronger. He was not satisfied with just one room full of gold. The next day, he ordered the miller's daughter to come back to the palace and take on an even larger pile of straw. He locked her in a room and told her, "If you do not spin this entire room of straw into gold by morning, you will never leave this place." Once again, the miller's daughter sat in despair. But before she could give up hope, the little man appeared again. He offered to help her, but this time he demanded a higher price. "I will spin this straw into gold," he said, "but you must give me your necklace in return." With no choice, the miller's daughter agreed. The little man spun the straw into gold once again, and by morning the room was filled with gold. The king, thrilled, ordered more straw to be brought to her. But his greed was insatiable. The next day, the king led the miller's daughter to a room even larger than the last, filled with mountains of straw. He told her that if she spun this straw into gold by morning, she would be rewarded with riches beyond her wildest dreams. But if she failed, she would spend the rest of her life in a cold, dark prison. Once again, the miller's daughter sat in despair, knowing she could not possibly complete the task. And once again, the little man appeared, offering to help her. This time he demanded an even greater payment. "Promise me," he said, "that when you become queen, you will give me your firstborn child." The miller's daughter was horrified by the request. But, desperate to save her life and free herself from the king's grasp, she agreed. The little man spun the straw into gold once again, and by morning, the room was filled with glittering treasure. The king, now completely enchanted by her abilities, made her his queen, and they were married in a grand ceremony. For a time, the queen and the king lived happily together, and soon enough, the queen became pregnant. But as her due date drew near, she began to remember the strange little man and the promise she had made. She feared that she would have to give him her child, and she wept for the loss of her baby. One day, as the queen sat in her room, crying, the little man appeared once again. He had come to collect his payment, and the queen begged him to release her from her promise. "I will give you anything, anything but my child," she pleaded. The little man, however, was firm in his demand. "You made a promise," he said. "But if you can guess my name in 3 days, I will release you from your vow." The queen was overjoyed at this offer. She began to think of every name she knew, sending her servants to search far and wide for unusual names. She tried every name she could think of, but the little man always laughed and said, "That is not my name." On the 3rd and final day, the queen's messenger returned with a strange and unexpected piece of news. The messenger had heard of a curious man who lived deep in the forest. The man danced around a fire and sang a song, boasting about his name. The messenger quickly shared this information with the queen, and she realized that the little man's name might be the one he had sung in his song. She waited eagerly for the little man to appear. When the little man arrived to collect the child, the queen confidently said, "Your name is Rumpelstiltskin." The little man froze in shock. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I know your name, Rumpelstiltskin, and because of that, I am free from my promise," the queen declared. Rumpelstiltskin, furious and humiliated, vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. The queen was relieved and overjoyed to keep her child, and the king, having witnessed the whole ordeal, was equally pleased that the wicked little man was gone. From that day forward, the queen and the king lived happily with their child, and they never had to worry about Rumpelstiltskin again. The queen learned to be careful with the promises she made, and she was grateful for the cleverness that had helped her protect her family. The end. Moral of the story: Rumpelstiltskin teaches us that promises should not be made lightly, especially when they are driven by fear or desperation. It also reminds us that cleverness and resourcefulness can help us overcome even the most difficult challenges. And in the end, honesty and keeping one's word are of the utmost importance.